Well, hello, Shelley Wilson. Welcome to the Writing with Purpose podcast. I'm very excited to talk to you and thank you so much for giving up an hour or so of your time to talk to me. Welcome.
Yes, yeah, thank you. It's fabulous to be here, Anna. It really is. I'm excited.
Yeah, excellent. So, Shelley, you are an English award-winning blogger and a best-selling multi-genre author of over 20 books, or genre straddling, as I saw on your website, which I thought was a great term. Um, so in your books, as I say, you're a multi-genre author. They include non-fiction, self-help, children's meditation, romance, which is the debut one, which I shall ask you about, planners, and young adult, which tends to focus on supernatural horror and historical novels. So when you're not writing, Shelley, you work as a writing mentor and you
Yeah,
help women in business to get their book ideas out of their heads and down onto the page, which
yeah.
I'm not sort of just segmenting women here, but we do tend to have a lot in our heads and a lot of limiting beliefs around getting that stuff out, don't we?
That is so true. So true. Yeah, I think we stop ourselves, don't we, of from just creating anything, whether it's a social media post, let alone a book. Yeah, it's all in our head. So it's nice to have somebody to kind of hold your hand and tease it all out. And I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, because you can see the process from start to finish, also,
Yeah.
and with being through it yourself, then
Yes.
yeah, you've got
Yeah.
all that wisdom to share. Yeah, I can see
Wisdom.
how rewarding that is at the end of it.
Massively.
Now, before you started writing and became a writing mentor, you ran a holistic business, which where motivation, mindset, and well-being were the main focus. And I love that because I think a lot of writers tend to come from a sort of background. I'm familiar with that myself, and it's almost as though you go through these previous careers and then we need to share something based on what we've learned. And I'm sure there's some statistics out there you might know, but I doubt there's many writers, published writers in particular, who started that career fresh out of college or school.
Very rare, very rare.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have like so many, and in a good way because we have something to write about. I often say that I've reinvented myself more times than Madonna. And I stand by that because we do, don't we, as we go through our cycles almost, it's like probably every 7 years I've changed and done something new. But it's fodder for books. It's creative learning all the while.
It
But
is.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely using that life and those life experience and shaping that into a story. So, I'm curious about your journey, Shelley, and how your author's journey started. So, if I could ask, what how that came about, and then what part did reading and writing play in your childhood?
So I think my childhood was I always had my nose in a book, simple as that. I followed Enid Blyton up a faraway tree many years ago, and I never came back down again. I was absolutely hooked. I was one of those kids, when they'd only let you take so many books out the library, and I was like to the max every Saturday. I just yeah, absolutely loved stories. It's interesting that I write for young adult and that kind of supernatural because the stories I loved were the C.S. Lewis's, the magic faraway tree. They were all other worlds and escapism, and it was just yeah, a big part of my childhood. Um,
Did you read Point
knowing
Horror as well? Sorry to interrupt. Did you read?
yeah, no,
You did,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. When I was a teenager, I was obsessed with James Herbert, Stephen King, all of that. Absolutely loved them. Yeah,
Mm.
all of that. Oh God, I've been through every genre known to man, I think. It's my Gemini brain. That's what it is. Um, but yeah, when I was little, I kind of, if you'd have asked like 10-year-old me, what do I want to be when I grow up, I'd have loved to have said, oh, an author. But
Mm.
back in the 80s, that just wasn't even a thing, was it? You had to be a proper published author back then. So I went down every other route. I'm going to be something else and whatever. And it was probably when I was always writing, always doing little stories on my proper typewriter with carbon
Mm.
paper, show my age now, and sending it off submissions. Um, but I was in my 40s before I really took my writing seriously. Um, and it was a kind of a now or never moment, I think. And I wished I'd started earlier, but I wouldn't have had half of what I've learned over all of those years. And and finding what I love to read as well. I think I did. I mean, I literally devoured books when I was a kid. So I ended up really stealing my dad's Wilbur Smith books and my mum's Danielle Steele books. And I can't even dread to think what age I was when I was reading them. But it
Brilliant.
was literally, I've got to be absorbing all these stories. And yeah, and then just telling them in my own way as well as I got older.
Yeah, I think when you're into reading, because that was very much like my childhood as well. I loved reading, and you just devour things and become almost it's a form of addiction in a way, I think, because
Yeah,
you get into the first chapter or a couple of chapters of a book and then you're hooked. And I remember um going on holiday with my parents for the first time we went abroad. We went somewhere in Spain. I think I was 14 or 15, and I'd got several books with me, and I didn't want to go out anywhere with them. I just sat in the apartment on some marble stairs in between the top terrace and the living areas and read. And they went off and did their own thing. We're probably quite
I'd have been
happy not
sat
to.
with you.
Yeah, probably quite happy not to have the moody teenager with them at the time. But yeah, that really was life. But I think you're right. Sometimes when you have that active imagination, and you love to go into these new worlds and relate to these characters, there is a lot of the outside world as well that almost adds depth to that.
Yeah,
And then we're kind of ready to create our own story or share our own
yeah.
story. So you mentioned Enid Blyton as probably a childhood favorite, and then Danielle Steele and some of the horror books. I read a James Herbert from my I think it's called The Fog. It scared the life out of me. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
I think I was
They were
too young.
terrifying, weren't they?
Yeah, yeah. So because you don't have certification on books, do you? Like you do with
No,
films,
no, that's so true.
18
PG.
plus. Yeah. So what was the last book that you read? Uh, current book
So,
that
oh
you
my
read?
goodness. At the moment I'm actually beta reading a few of my clients' books. But the last one I did read was the Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. So it's a bit of spice, I have to say. Only kind of maybe one chili pepper. But it's all over TikTok at the moment, and my daughter's helping me sort of do my author TikTok. So we're following all the book talkers and seeing what they're talking about, and we found these, and it's a series. Absolutely brilliant. So there's 3 books at the moment in the series. I think she's doing a 4th. And yeah, so me and my daughter are kind of sharing them. I've read that one. She's read the middle one. We've got to swap them all over and start on the Christmas one.
Right.
But it's do you know, I've been seeing lots of mixed messages about it where people are like, it's so simple. But that's what I loved. It's a happy ending book. It's a friends to lovers book. So there's no real massive conflict. It's just a really easy, nice read.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we need that. Life's so busy. We
Yeah.
just need that nicety, I think, with some books. So yeah, 10 out of 10 for me,
Yeah,
definitely.
a real feel good story, one that you can snuggle up with the blanket and a hot
Yeah.
cuppa or something. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Just like
Yeah.
the Hallmark Christmas movies that they put out
Yes.
over Christmas. That it's one of those lovely stories. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've written that down, Pumpkin Spice Cafe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not on TikTok. Well, I am on TikTok actually, but I haven't done anything from it for a while. But yeah, someone I was talking to the other day mentioned about TikTok and how, so is it sort of like Bookstagram? Is it Bookstagram where people
Yeah, the
review
book
books
talkers
and
and they're doing very similar. Yeah,
mm,
so
mm,
yeah, I mean they can push a book though if a lot of them like it, they can push it straight up the charts. It's quite an influential platform.
yeah.
But I love reading or seeing the videos when they share their thoughts and what the book was about for them. So yeah, it's interesting, but I'm still getting my head around it. I have the face for radio, not for TikTok.
No, it's almost as though it's a pre-request to do something a bit daft, or have something sparkly going around your head or in the background or something. And yeah, no, I'm still of the static photograph stage.
Yeah, yeah, I relate.
But then yeah, that's an age thing, isn't it? So we've mentioned that you write across many genres. In fact, your debut romance was actually released. Well, so we're recording this in November, aren't we? And Floating Solo was released
Yeah.
earlier on in November. And I love the thought of the story and living on a narrow boat and that sounds quite a simple sort of concept and theme for me,
Yeah.
something that it's a nice kind of feel good start. So yeah, I don't read a lot of romance to be honest, but it's something that I really, that kind of drew me in. And I think the cover and everything, the design that you've got is very intriguing as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. So
So happy with the cover.
yeah, it's great. It really is. So I wondered, I was quite curious about, the choice of genre and, what sort of what did you start with and move through with and, why change it up so much?
Yeah, great question. I think when I first thought I'm going to write a book, in my head, it was always going to be fiction. And so I got divorced, what, 20 years ago. And I found myself single mum, three kids, and they were 2, 3, and 5 at the time. So they were very young. But when they go to bed, I'm on my own. And so it was like, what am I going to do with myself? And I refound my love of reading then. And I remember walking into a bookshop and kind of looking and going, I don't know what I enjoy anymore. Am I a horror reader? And in the end, it was almost. I mean, my marriage wasn't very nice, to be fair. So I didn't want romance and I didn't want crime and mystery because that was my whole life. So I ended up finding the young adult section, and it just opened the floodgates, if you like, of werewolves and vampires
Yeah.
and sci-fi and just coming of age stories. And I think at that time in my life, I suppose I was sulking because I'd missed a big portion of my own life, and I could lose myself into being 16 again or 18 again. And I absolutely adored them. And I read that many, and I've still got them all now. And my kids were obviously, as they were growing up, I was seeing them turning into young adults themselves, queens as well. And I thought, I wonder, I'm going to have a go. I'm going to have a go at writing it. And I ended up writing young adult because almost for myself, like for the 16-year-old I wished I'd been. So there's a lot of themes about confidence and self-trust and self-belief because I wasn't like that. I was a nerd, a nerdy teenager, wasn't popular, it was just I just was what I was. Um, and I think, yeah, putting yourselves into all sorts of situations, whether it is vampires and werewolves, it doesn't matter. It's the actual core of the story is all very much, learning about yourself and understanding yourself better and loyalty and friendships and first love and that malarkey. And I loved it, absolutely loved it. And that was always the plan, but it ended up being non-fiction that came out first, just like accidentally on purpose.
Just a complete U-turn there.
Yeah, totally. In my head, it was always fiction, fiction. If you said to me you're going to write a book, it was always fiction.
Did you start writing that book then and then realize now is not the time and then you went for the non-fiction?
And no,
Okay.
writing fiction
Hmm.
constantly. I was
Hmm.
filling notebooks with ideas and thoughts and never really getting anywhere because I hadn't learned about plotting back then. So I was just pantsing it. I was just hoping for the best. But yeah, once I learned how to plot and outline your book, that was the game changer for me. But 10 years ago, I was obviously had my spa, so I was doing my holistics. And a lot of my clients were coming to me with, I want to do so much better, but I don't know how. And that prompted me to start blogging. And I did my 52 New Year's resolutions in a year. Excuse me. And I blogged about it. And it was at the end of that year that that whole year's worth of content got reworked and rewritten and became my first book. So hence the nonfiction just came out of nowhere. Um, and part of that year, I took part in National Novel Writing Month for the first time, and
Ah,
that's when I actually got my first draft of my first fiction novel. So I guess they kind of came around the same time, but the non-fiction was released first, and that had never been on my radar at all. Just I wasn't a non-fiction reader, so it never even got onto my brain. But it's still my best-selling book 10 years later.
yeah.
Um, so
Wow.
it was clearly meant to be, definitely.
Yeah, it was the one that needed to be written at the time. And because,
Yeah,
those 52 articles that you wrote, that's your lived experience. You can pour your emotions into that. Everything that's in there has happened, and it's great learnings for other people who are going through a similar journey. So
exactly. Yeah.
mm,
I
yeah.
had loads of people message me about, so because it was a challenge related type of year, whilst I was doing the blog as well as when the book came out, I had so many people going, "You've inspired me. I want to do this. I'm going to change this." And last year, I can tell you this now, last year I was tagged in on a post on my author page on Facebook by a group of ladies who were meeting up in a coffee shop every month to talk through what they were going to do each month to support each other and challenge each other. And I was like, I don't understand why I'm being tagged in on this. And then at the very end, it said, to give you context, we started this community after reading Shelley's How I Changed My Life in a Year. Well, of
Oh,
course, I'm bursting into tears because this is like the happiest thing ever. And they tagged in the coffee shop that they meet in. And I thought, oh, it'd be lovely to surprise them and go and see it. So I clicked on it and they're in Philadelphia in America. And I was
oh
like, maybe
wow.
not. Maybe I
One
won't pop
day,
in then.
one day.
But I did jump on Zoom with them, and some of them were learning Spanish, some of them were doing Keep Fit. It was just amazing. It was honestly, and I'm like, I did that. Oh my, it's just the most amazing feeling in the world. It really is to know that you've had an impact on somebody at the other side of the world.
Yeah,
Just,
so
yeah,
far away across the pond. Yeah,
yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, I can totally understand you, falling to bits and crying over that. Is it? I had actually. So did you set yourself something new to do every week? Was that the concept behind it? To sort of live a better
It was
life?
kind of a monthly theme, if you like, and then
Mm,
I broke that each month in 2 weeks. So yeah,
right.
there was something different every single week, and anything and everything. Literally, my kids were a lot smaller then, so I was making fairy gardens with them. I went without telly for a week, and that was a challenge. I gave up alcohol. I did a zip wire through Sherwood. Just literally so much that I had to go at. Um, and just wrote about the highs, the lows, and warts and all. And it
Yeah.
resonated with the audience.
Yeah, I think it's something that people can take, and in a group like that, it's great because they can set
Yeah,
themselves something. They've got the
exactly.
accountability between themselves, and then they've got something to share. And the whole experience is a learning experience, isn't it? And to have it that close-knit community. Oh, how fabulous! It
I
reminds me
know.
a little bit of, in fact, I've got it down here. You are the English Julia Cameron, the
Oh,
artist's way.
that's an honour.
Have you read The Artist's Way? Is that something
Yes,
that's
I have.
inspired you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fabulous book.
Yeah, I've not I did up to week 7 and then I started the masters and I thought I can't continue with
There
this.
you
It's
go.
just too much time.
One thing at a time, and then you'll be okay.
Yeah, I ought to be able to pick it back up again now. Yeah. But no, that's a fabulous story, and well done to the ladies and to yourself for that, and everyone else that you don't know about that's probably done a similar thing. So where does your inspiration come from? And from listening to you and doing a bit of digging, a lot of it seems to be lived experience. But what are your sources of inspiration? Because you're constantly writing new content. You're prolific out there on various social media channels. You do the mentoring with other writers, aspiring writers, and you still find time to constantly write your own material. So that's off to you. Where does it come
Thank
from?
you. Thank you. I think I'm just a nosy person, just a curious person, and I think inspiration's everywhere. I think too many of us close ourselves off from it. And I talk about this with my clients a lot about that blank page syndrome, as we call it, that or the fear of the blank page, where you just see a white sheet and that's it. Your brain just everything falls out. Um, but all you have to do is look out the window. Something's happening outside, whatever. You can write about what you see, hear, smell, all of it. And so that's where you find your inspiration from. So for me, a lot of it is exactly as you've said, my own experiences. I love traveling in my VW camper van.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of just going away for the weekend or having a day trip and just being in places. I've when I did a trip up to Whitby, so that kind of inspired my vampire duology.
With the
I
Dracula,
did
yeah.
Yeah, all of that. I went up to Bamborough in Northumberland. So I did research for my Viking novel up there. Um, it could be as simple as a photograph in a magazine, and I'll see the picture, and straight away I'll either get a character will pop in, or a scene or something around that picture, and I play with it in my head. When you're at school and your teachers tell you off for daydreaming,
Mm.
that's an integral part of my working day. It's just staring out the window
Yeah.
because there's so much going on in my head as I'm creating stuff. So yeah, inspirations everywhere. Conversations that you overhear in a coffee shop can spark the most amazing dialogue. People you meet as well, and what they do and what they achieve, and who inspires you. Songs, emotions. There's just so much. We just need to know how to tap into it, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, and you've listed so many things there, and I think a part of the problem sometimes is we are so busy and sometimes set in our ways, but also closed off from the outside world and the things that are happening that we're just not aware of we're so wrapped up in our heads that we're not aware of these things that can be inspiring, like you say, over here in a conversation, seeing something happen outside, looking at something in a magazine. We're actually paying attention to it rather than just mindlessly scrolling or flicking or whatever that might be.
Facebook group, I share a prompt every Wednesday, and it's just an image, just a photo of whatever it might be. And I give them a few, right? Could you write a blog post about this? Could you write a book chapter about this? Could you write a social media post? And I think sometimes we do need that little bit of a nudge, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. And that works well for me. I see a lot of metaphors out in nature. I use creativity cards because sometimes I almost need to bypass the logical side of my brain sometimes, or the stuff that gets trapped, and just release that. And then I can go a little bit deeper, and then it all
Yeah.
starts to sort of flow a little bit more. And I was going to ask you as you were talking there, how do you, because this is an issue that I've come across all my life, actually. It's not just from a writing point of view, which I'm finally focusing on now. I've done a lot of other things in my life, but this has always been a theme that I have so many ideas. How do you select the ones to roll with?
Yeah, I hear that a lot. It's funny. One of the things I would say to people is if you've got multiple ideas, write them out on a piece of paper and put them in a pot. And then when you are right, I really want to write something, delve in, pull out whatever it is. You will have a gut reaction to it. If you pull it out and go, not feeling that, then you know that you don't want to write that one. So you dive in and get another one. But if you pull it out and you go, yeah, okay, I can work with that, your self-conscious, your subconscious, sorry, is sort of saying we
Yeah,
can do this. And sometimes you'll start one project and then realize it's the wrong one. You just know. So this November, I was in doing National Novel Writing Month, as I mentioned, and I was going down the route of writing another Viking novel because I did so much research for my first one. I wanted to kind of keep using it. I'm probably two chapters in. I was like, not feeling this.
yeah,
I'm not feeling this at the moment. And so I've put that to the side. It's all planned out. It can be picked up at any time, and started on a brand new romance. And whether that's because I've just written a romance and I'm still in that euphoria, I don't know.
yeah,
But it was something that I'd been playing with. So I hadn't even got it mapped out. I literally had to map it out overnight so that I could keep writing. Um, and yeah, that not a problem. I'm writing that, no problem at all. But I
wow,
know that the other one's waiting in the wings for me.
yeah,
So I think trust your gut is probably my best piece of advice I can give you. Um, you'll know when you're writing. One thing I did, one of my books was how I motivated myself to succeed. And at that particular time in my life when I'd started writing it, and this was for my publisher, so I had deadlines and what have you. Um, I was quite poorly with anxiety and depression, and I was probably 30,000 words in. And I remember messaging my editor going, I can't do this.
yeah,
My reader's going to know because I am so far from motivated at the moment. And I threw them in the bin, 30,000 words. But what I did do was I wrote a werewolf book because escaping into the trees and being a 16-year-old doing this, that, and the other was so much easier than real life.
mm,
And so that's how I coped with it. And then all of a sudden, maybe a year or two later, it just came back, just dropped into my head, and I was like, oh, I can write it now, and I did, and I've
Yeah.
published it. So
Yeah.
yeah, trust yourself, I think.
Yeah, and that's a great example of you knowing yourself, I think. You know, it's happened a couple of times that, you know, you've said, right, this isn't working. And then almost once you've stopped, that's kind of freed up the space, whatever it is that you've needed at the time, for the right material, story, characters, whatever it might be, to then say, you know, get their time on stage almost.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you'll get to them all, but just one at a time, and in whatever order they fall out of the pot.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I completely relate to that because I've always wanted to write crime, and I've got quite a few ideas. Who done it on a cruise ship because I used to work on a cruise ship.
Right.
Psychological thrillers because you know I kind of I'm learning how to sort of tap into the shadow side and you know write from a sort of different place. But what I did for the master's assignment, the final one, which I'm up to, well, it was 15,000 words creative, 5,000 critical. I'm up to about 17,000 words on the creative because I've continued. That's more like a sort of find yourself, feel good type
Yes.
story. But I'm at a point now where I'm thinking, I need to come and speak to you with your planning because I'm at the pantser stage, I think. And for those that don't know, a plotter, when you're writing, a plotter is, you know, someone that plans things out, and a pantser is as you know, fly from the seat of your pants. And I'm definitely in that stage at the moment. And I don't know whether to keep it feel good or whether to turn it a little bit sinister. And
Yeah.
I'm sort of holding off writing anything because I'm not sure which way to take it at the moment. So I
So
think,
in that aspect, I would just keep writing and see what where you take it as you're writing.
okay.
Knowing you've got two ways, you could write it both ways. You could actually literally write it both ways and make a whole quirky sales pitch about that. Um, but you know when you're writing, and I remember reading about this and thinking that can't be true. What a load of rubbish. But when a character takes over,
Mm,
it's the most surreal feeling because your fingers are doing the typing, but they have gone off in a total different direction. And while you're typing, you might be going, right, okay, I'm going to go down the lovey-dovey route, but your fingers and your characters might take over and take you straight naturally down the other cynical route. So
yeah.
just keep going and see
Just keep
what
going.
comes up. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that before, and I have had a little taste of it because a couple of the characters are not they've sort of developed not the way that I thought they were going to, and there is somebody that could be a bit of a love interest in there, and that was something I was not going to touch at all. I didn't want my mum reading anything where there was a little bit of you know that sort of thing. But yeah, I think you just have to coming back to what you were saying before, you know, trust your gut, your intuition, yourself, whatever you want to call that, is just let that sort of, you know, show itself and trust in the process and where it needs to
Yeah,
go.
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, great advice there, Shelley. Thank you. So I think I might know the answer to this because you mentioned it earlier on, and I was going to jump in and ask the question there, but we sort of we continued. But who do you write for first? So fresh novel, fresh piece of writing. Who do you write for first?
So it's probably myself, definitely,
Mm,
yeah. And I always go through the creating the ideal reader avatar, whether it's fiction, non-fiction, so I know who to focus my story for, and that's more the business side of it because we write these to sell. But yeah, it's always me almost telling myself, sort it out.
yeah,
You can be this, you can do that. Um, and then there's probably a mix of a few maybe friends or my kids or people that I've met in networking who I think, oh, they could, this
yeah.
would be good for them to hear. And yeah, so but I think most of the time I'm writing what I would love to read.
Yeah, yeah, I think I would agree with that. And also, it's, you know, living those lives that you've not actually led yet, maybe, but wanting
Yeah.
to experience that and writing that in a character and experiencing that in a character, or you know, well, this happened, but what if that happened? And
Oh, the
and
what
also,
if question, I love that. When you're
yeah,
writing, just keep going, what if, what if, what if, and you just
yeah,
get so much out of it.
seeing where it leads, who knows
Yeah.
where? Yeah, yeah, and I think also from the therapeutic approach that writing provides, you know, journaling is a lot of, I get a lot of inspiration from journaling and asking myself those questions. And then who knows where that might lead. And then just,
Yeah.
getting the pen and just free writing. And that's very cathartic in itself to empty those thoughts. It doesn't have to be to go into a book, but I think just the therapeutic process of writing is for you. And then at the end of it, you have those realizations, all those ideas, or those creative ways to solve a problem. And yeah, just picking up the pen and seeing where
Yeah,
it
it
leads.
is. Just being in the zone, isn't it? Whatever you're writing. And I always say to my clients that nothing's ever wasted. We cut stuff out, of course we do, but I never get them to cut it completely. I'll get them to put it into a
Yeah,
deleted folder. And just yeah, just put anything that's in there because it can come, you just never know when it might be dropped into another book, it might be a prompt, it might be something for a social media marketing, LinkedIn post, there's so much. So yeah, everything we write has a purpose.
yeah.
Even if it's just for ourselves, it's definitely creativity, yeah. And we need to feel our creative well as well and keep
Mm.
making sure that we're okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think creativity is it's underestimated. We lose it as we grow a bit older, but then I think quite often as adults we find it. And you mentioned around about that 40 mark as when you started writing. I think I was 41 when a lot of big changes happened in my life, and I started thinking, okay, well, what's the purpose? There must be more to life than this. And
Yeah.
then you start to make. I wish I'd have started documenting earlier when I tried new things and did new things, because yeah, I think there's a lot of material there that can be used. And also just reflection, looking back on it and thinking, oh, wow, I did that. I
Yeah.
achieved that. And
Yeah.
yeah, give yourself a pat on the
I think
back.
with the journaling, especially and bullet journals, I mean, they're all sort of over Instagram and Pinterest, aren't they? I think the younger generation they've got it at their fingertips, whereas we probably really didn't when we were growing up.
Mm,
Um, we had diaries, it may be, but the journaling aspect of it, that, really opening and digging deep into what your feelings and sitting with them and writing about them, that this younger generation that are coming up are really embracing it. And I think it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
yeah, I agree. The thing that wasn't as accessible at all a couple of decades ago, and it wasn't. Not that it was a taboo subject, but people just didn't talk about it in the same way that things are open these days. And yeah, the generations now are growing up with that, and they're growing up with people who are publishing pretty much their entire lives online and being
Yeah.
okay with it.
With young adults as well, what I love about that particular genre is that there's nothing's really taboo. You can talk about anything because they devour it. They want to learn, they want to understand, they want to know.
Yeah,
And I think that's something that pulls me towards young adult as well.
yeah. Is there another young adult in the pipeline?
Oh, I'm sure there will be.
So, if I could just ask you, you mentioned about your publisher
Yeah.
when you were talking about ringing them up and saying, "Look, I'm not in the right place for this one at the moment." So, what are your views on sort of self-publishing versus traditional publishing? Because the whole model's changed quite a lot, hasn't it, over the last
Yes.
few
Yeah.
years, and making it more accessible should people want to publish something, then they can do
Yeah.
in various different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the first questions I ask my writing clients is what is their end goal? What do they want to achieve? Do they want a traditional contract or are they happy to go it alone? Because that can influence a lot of things. If you go down the traditional route, it's going to take longer because from me submitting my manuscripts to my publisher, it was probably 18 months before it came out, by which time I'd written another book.
Yeah.
So when that was coming out, I'd have to reread it to remind myself who my characters were because I was like 3 books down by then. So there's that time scale. If you're looking, if you want to write a non-fiction book around your business, you might want that out faster. You might want in the next 6 months to get that out launched and it be helping you make an impact and for your visibility. Again, if you just want to get your story out there, if it's a fiction story, you just want to get it out there, it's a lot faster doing it self-published. The finances are a huge thing because traditional, you don't pay for anything. They take all that on board. But with self-publishing, you have the outlay of your editor, your cover designer, your typesetter, your marketing, everything. And I think if you know you're going to go down the self-publishing route, it's almost like right, okay, so what's my budget? What am I going to do? Who do I know? Where can I skill swap? Do I, is there a graphic designer living in my house that can do my front cover? It's things like that. There are ways that you can bring that cost down. But it is a real personal journey, and I love both. My
Mm.
publisher they're just brilliant. They've just been fantastic. I've been with them for so long now, massively supportive, and they're over in America, so that they're not on my doorstep either. But we've got a really lovely relationship. But equally, my latest book I self-published.
Ah,
I went
okay.
down, I did it myself because I hadn't done it for a while, for quite a few years. I wanted to get back in and know so that I could show my clients, right, this is how you do it. This is what I did wrong this time. This is where you can, avoid those steps. But yeah, I love both routes, but there's pros and cons for both, and it
Mm.
really is your own. What's your goal? What do you want to get out of this publishing journey, and then backtrack to which is the best route for you.
Yeah, and I think having the advice from someone that's done it both ways to be able to weigh up those pros and cons. I mean, the biggest factor sound as though it's cost and time, and then yeah, how quickly you want to get something out there. It's interesting because I was doing the masters. One of the modules was more for a proposal for something, and I ended up writing a proposal for a series of wellbeing writing workshops that would be in the community and local library. So I didn't actually look at much of the information about publishing, but they had a lot there for traditional and self-publishing. And I've also got the Writers and Artists Yearbook down here, which has got a list, hasn't
Fabulous
it, of all of
resource.
the,
Yeah,
yeah, but then you've got
yeah,
agents and publishing houses, and so it is quite a minefield, I think, isn't
it
it? And
is. It
I
is.
wonder,
Yeah,
but I do wonder if it turns people off who aren't quite determined enough. It's one of those factors that, oh, I don't, I'll never get through it, sort of thing. So what's the
yeah. And I
point?
think rejections are a part of traditional publishing. We all know the story of J.K. Rowling.
Mm.
How many times she was rejected before Harry Potter got picked up. And you hear stories like that all the time. And my publisher rejected one of my books when I pitched it to them, which was absolutely fine because what I did was I self-published it, and that was another meditation book. And they were honest with me. They went, we don't know how we can market this. We've got another one. So I'd done the meditation for children, which they published, which went really well. And a lot of my readers, as their kids were growing up, were going, "Will you do a next step, like a tweens and teens version?" Which I did. But my publisher were like, "No, we can't do anything with that." So I did it myself.
Mm.
So that is out there, but it's a self-published. And so even if you're with a publisher, they can still turn you down, as it were. It's not oh, that's it, definite stamp of approval. Everything you write is going to be published. But yeah, it's finding the right fit. The Writers and Artists Yearbook, fabulous resource. And some smaller houses, some smaller publishing houses, you don't need an agent. So if you're looking out for that they accept unsolicited manuscripts, that means that you don't need an agent. You can just pitch. But then submissions as well. You need your cover letter, your synopsis.
Yeah.
There's a whole formula, and you're absolutely right. If you haven't got the brain space, the time, and the inclination, just self-publish
Yeah.
because you haven't got to think about all that then.
Yeah, it's a little bit, I'm not going to say the easier way, but yeah,
Yeah,
there's
no, I know
less
what you
for you
mean.
to plan up front. Yeah.
Yes,
And I
yeah,
think am I right in saying that if you've written fiction, then generally they want to see the full thing, but if you're writing non-fiction, the first three chapters or so and an outline
yeah,
is kind of what the request
yeah.
is.
Yeah, your first three chapters definitely. Sometimes you can pitch with a synopsis, so you don't even have to write the book. You can send them what your idea is, and they can go, "Yeah, we're interested." Um, yeah, I think going back to your earlier question, because I write for myself, I always have a full draft
Yeah.
before I would pitch, so I quite easily send them the full manuscript if they requested it because I knew I'd written it anyway.
Mm.
But I do know authors who will pitch without writing anything at all. All they've got is their outline.
Right.
And then if it comes back and says, yeah, right, you've got a year to write it, then they
Yeah, because I suppose you get the I don't know what the proper term is, like a down payment, or you
yeah, you'll get I can't remember what I was going to say royalties, but I know what you mean. The one up front.
the one up front, yeah, which keeps you
Yeah.
going for a bit. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's fascinating, and it's something I think that you can do a lot of research around. But having
Yes. Yeah,
that
yeah.
sort of, the the kind of heads up from someone that's been through it is very
Yeah.
valuable for people. So yeah, coming sort of to your writer mentor, sorry, role. You've got quite a lot of options, haven't you, where you work with people on a one-to-one basis. You've got an accountability group. You've got a
Yeah.
lot of free and very low-cost resources on the website as well that people can sort of have as a starting point. So what kind of things do you find that people are looking for? So for those that are listening that are aspiring to write something part of the way through their journey, what's kind of, I mean, I guess everyone's different, aren't they? So I can't sort of say what are the
Yeah.
main things, but what do you find that most people come to you for?
It's I didn't have all of this availability, that all this stuff in these resources when I first started. So I did kind of bimble through it and have to teach myself almost. And I think that was the whole point of doing my mentoring, was so other people didn't have to, sit on a story and not know where to start. So my niche is always very much, you've got an idea, right, let's pick it apart and get you started. But interestingly, the question I get asked the most is, how do I publish my book? And then I will say, what have you written? And 9 times out of 10, oh, I haven't written anything. I
Oh,
just want to know how to publish it. Every time, every time. It's like we always need to know the end before we start at the beginning. So that's always a first question. But then the next one is, I've got this idea. What do I do next?
mm,
And it's that what we talked about at the very beginning, where our heads are full of just stuff buzzing through. How do you turn that into a physical book that you can hold and read? The gaps that are in the middle, how do you piece all that together? And that's what I wanted to provide. I wanted to give all the resources and step-by-step procedures, and also that accountability. So as they, right, okay, now I understand about plotting. Now I understand that I've been a pantser, but I can change my ways. Now I understand what chapter by chapter breakdown is. Now I understand how to mind map my brain, my book idea. And when they're off and running and they start writing, then I can offer the accountability, so that they can, especially through my membership, is every month we have a call. Right, what's your writing goal for the month ahead? What are you going to set yourself? And it's a bit like all those slimming clubs that when
yeah,
you've got to do something by next Thursday, you sit down and do it, don't you? Normally Wednesday night.
Wednesday night.
And I know that, and my clients, they do laugh and say, "Oh gosh, I remember we've got the call tomorrow. I better do some homework." Um, if that's what they need, and if that's what gets their book written, then so be it. But we do co-writing sessions as well, so kind of all jump on Zoom and write at the same time, which is a lot of fun. But yeah, it's just offering a little bit of the jigsaw to keep them so that they can get to where they need to be, and not overwhelm them, because it can be huge.
Yeah, just drop little things when they need them without letting them know too far in advance what's coming so that they don't get
Yeah.
overwhelmed about it. Yeah. So what have you got planned for 2025? What's next?
So I'm on a mission to simplify my life, to be fair. So that's the main focus. And with that, I'm going to be focusing a lot on the membership, because I think that's where I can give the most help. So that's the kind of business hat. With the author hat, I'll definitely get this next romance written. And I would like to have the Viking book off and running by the end of the year as well. But who knows? I might end up with 4 or 5 romances coming out next. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows once you've got the taste of it.
I know.
Yeah. Do you set yourself a goal, Shelley, of sort of, I want to write a book a year, or does it just come out as and when the ideas are flowing?
I do try. So when I first started, I used to do 2 books a year. So I used to write a fiction and a non-fiction.
Mm.
As I've got busier with work and life and everything else, that has like gone to one book a year now. But it probably takes me roughly 6 months to get a full draft done. If I'm taking part in National Novel Writing Month, I can sometimes get that first 50,000 words done in 30 days. But that is just words vomited onto a page. That takes a lot of rewriting. But yeah, 6 months, you can get a book done, definitely.
Yeah.
And then engage with a professional editor then.
Yeah. So you do your 6 months writing and then almost your 6 months in everything
Yeah.
else to wrap it up and have it published
Yeah.
and then start again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Floating Solo, I wrote the first draft last November and it came out this November.
Mm. Mm.
So yeah, so that's self-published timeline.
Yeah, yeah, and like you say, if you're going down the traditional route, probably add an extra 6, if not
Extra, yeah,
12 months
yeah,
onto that. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, unless you've got that deal, and then you can just keep churning them out, as they
Yeah,
say.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because a lot of my author friends actually who they write for like HarperCollins and things like that, and they do a Christmas book and a summer book, so they're on two, so they have a very tight deadline
Yeah.
for their books.
Yeah, I do wonder sometimes because I follow quite a few authors on Instagram now, and they're here at this book signing, they're there at this conference where they're a guest speaker, and I think, how do you find the time to fit that? But I suppose if you don't have, like yourself, if there's no business angle there as well, you do have more time, don't you? You can
Yeah, of
sort of
course.
spread yourself a little bit over the country or the world if you're going to
Yeah,
different events.
yeah. And I think if you really want it, you'll find time.
Mm.
I say this to a lot of my clients. I've watched Friends, the whole series of Friends, probably a million times, which means I don't probably need to watch it again. I could use that time to write a book. So
Oh, but
it's
you
things like,
do.
what are you doing with your time, really? Are you
Yeah,
doom scrolling on social media? Could you be writing a chapter? So yeah, it's very much how much do you want this?
yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. But I'm with you on the friends. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's I do.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm just waiting till my partner's daughter's 9. She's 10 next year, so I'm just waiting till she's a little bit older, and then I shall start again. But
Oh,
with her.
yeah. Yeah, I love that. My daughter's also a massive Friends fan.
Mm. Yeah, that
You
and
have to pass it
Yeah,
on.
you do have to pass it on. That and X-Files, actually. X-Files is the other thing that I used to love.
I
But
love that.
I think some of those now you might watch them back and think, oh, special effects are a bit poor. Which I think
Yeah,
is a real shame the way that the film industry has gone because not so much, our age when we knew that they were a bit crap and that's all
yeah,
we
yeah.
knew though,
We
but
accepted it.
we accepted it. But now younger people, if they watch something old like that, they're just going to switch off from it because it's
Yeah.
anyway, we digress.
Total tangent there.
Complete tangent. So what's the best way, Shelley, that people can connect with you and if they want to learn more?
Absolutely. So I do have I'm everywhere, as you've said. Like I'm on every social platform known to man. But my website is shelleywilsonauthor.com. And Shelley is Shelley. You get the extra E for free. And yeah, so you'll find my blog on there, you'll find my books on there. But I do have a link tree which has got a bit of everything. So you can pretty much Google me and I'll pop up somewhere.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, we'll share the link tree link and some other
Thank
links
you.
in the show notes as well. And also, what's the best way for people to get hold of your books? Do you have a preferred selling platform?
I think it's wherever their preferred selling platform is,
Mhm.
to be honest. So yeah, they're available Amazon, Waterstones, Barnes and Noble, the iTunes stuff. So yeah, I know on my publisher's website, if you go into the book, it breaks everywhere down. But
Mm.
I do need to get a bit more savvy with that on my own platform, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so if you search for any of them,
Yeah.
they should pop up.
Yeah. You're right. You just have to put your name in with author, and you everything's on page one.
Yeah.
That
My
comes
daughter
out, which is
Googled me once
great.
at college and she was like, oh my God, Mum, you actually came up.
Do you have a Wikipedia page? I know. So
Oh, God, I
I
don't
watched it.
know.
I was what was I reading the other day? So with the masters, I've really expanded my reading a lot, and I've loved it because I was very crime pretty much was all I used to read. With the odd supernatural. So James Patterson, Dean Koontz were my favourite when I was younger. Then
Yeah,
I got into Karen Slaughter, Martina Cole. So there was always this crime theme to it. But yeah, I've read a lot of other material as well as poetry and that, which I'm not convinced that much with the poetry. Apart from oh, what was her name? Oh, I've got the books downstairs. Oh, I'm kicking myself
Anna
now.
Ashton.
Yes.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
Isn't
She's
she
fab.
just a lovely little
Yeah.
fairy-like lady? She's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah, that's the only poetry I must admit. That's yeah, she's pretty good. Yeah,
Yeah, but she does say, doesn't she? She writes poetry for people that don't like poetry.
exactly. Yeah, nails her niche.
Yeah, definitely. But I read a Sally Rooney book. I didn't read, sorry, I listened to them all on Audible. Sorry, the library app. which is great, isn't it, if you want to listen to an audiobook, the
Right.
borrow
Yeah, yeah.
box for the library. Yeah, which authors do get a cut of, don't they? Which
Yes, they
I
do.
didn't
Yeah,
realise. So anything that you hire from a library, you might have for free, but thankfully the author does get a fee
yeah, yeah.
for it. But yeah, one of her stories that there was a character in there who kept Googling the other character, and oh, you got a Wikipedia page.
That'll be in the next book then.
Yes, I'll be in the next book, definitely. The romance. That's like, oh yeah, there's a storyline. I'm not into the romance side of things. You can bank that one. So it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, Shelley. Thank you so much for your
Cheers.
time. I've learned a lot. I've made some notes. Everyone listening has learned a lot as well. So thank you
Hope
very
so.
much for sharing, and best of luck with the novel and everything that 2005 has in store for
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. No, it's been an absolute pleasure joining us. Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's Writing with Purpose podcast. Having conversations with fellow writers or adventure enthusiasts brings two of my biggest loves in life together, writing and nature connection. I've been a copywriter and content creator for 23 years, but my passion is writing for well-being, and I'm on a mission to share the benefits that putting pen to paper has for personal wellness with as many people as possible. If you want to learn more about writing for your well-being and journaling techniques, please connect with me in my Facebook group, Journaling with Anna.